Good evening. My name is Mitchell Paris, and I'm going to be presenting to you my operating systems project. I'm going to first kind of flip over to uh, my slideshow. This is Operating System Project Phase 3 with Mitchell Paris. It's me. Great thing about online presentations is you don't know what I'm doing right now. It's great. So we're going to first start off with with the operating system in action. We're actually going to go over to my Java um, program, and we will start with that. So hold on just 1 second. There we go. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is look at the Java as the main program package. What I've done is created a series of classes that actually correspond to the classes that you'd see in a operating system: CPU, the hard drive, the RAM. Even though the CPU, the hard RAM, and the hard drive can be the same class, I decided to make the RAM a separate class because the hard drive wasn't going to have any parameters in it besides just hold stuff. Instruction and process are the two pieces that are just information holders. They hold the instructions in of themselves and act as what would be pages or units of memory. And then you have the process, which holds all the job information. So from there, you also have the PCB, which holds all the processes initially and also contains them at all times. You have the different queues, and I have them all listed under one queue. I've actually reusing that for all the for different queue classes because they all kind of hold the same information. Um, and then you have a report, which is a reporting function that I created. Short-term scheduler, long-term scheduler are pretty self-explanatory. And then you have the OS main, which is my main class. So we're going to look in OS main as the first thing. Got a set of Boolean up here. I kind of made some reporting and executing options. You need to keep phase 2 execute on if you're doing anything phase 2 or phase 3. Phase 3 execute doesn't really do anything currently. I was going to use it as a gating mechanism, but everything in phase 2 and phase 3 are the same for the most part. Phase 2 reporting, you can turn that on and off, and phase 1 reporting, the same thing. We used to be able to turn off the main loop, meaning you'd only iterate through the loop once, but it kind of ended up being a little bit more of a hassle, so I set that to be the phase 2 execute, which is what'll trigger that anyways. Set the number of CPUs, the RAM, the different sort types, meaning the long-term scheduler being first come, first served, storage job first priority, and this STS sorting type of first come, first served, release instructions priority. They both default to first come, first served if an invalid number is entered. The ready queue is currently equal to the RAM size because through the validation that was given to us, he wanted to have us to have specific RAM and our ready queue sizes, which were equivalent. The wait queue, IO queue, and terminate queue can all be different sizes if need be, but that will actually start causing errors because if you try to push something to the IO queue and it's not really accepted, it will cause an issue when it goes to context and pretty much blue screen the program. Going down, cycle counter actually counts the cycles of the main string. I'm going to go down to the big loop. So the big loop is pretty much what you think, starting with the long-term scheduler running, the ready queue, followed by the CPUs executing, a cleanup to make sure what's going on the termination queue, and then all the IO queue and wait queue holds. Also on top of that, I also have a check down the PCB to verify if all the jobs are terminated, then I don't want to do this anymore, and it exits the loop. The next thing is it also does a check to see if there's any new jobs on the PCB. If there's no new jobs, then there's no reason for the long-term scheduler to actually run, so it just ignores it. Continuing on, the cleanup is mostly where I clean up the memory, and that is the biggest trick here. Is that when I load everything into memory, it's all in memory until the job terminates. Once it terminates, it goes back through and deletes all the memory and readjusts all the pointers to make sure that they're pointing at the correct memory addresses. Continuing on, all the hiss down here is all reporting. You can turn a lot of this on and off by using the booleans up top. So we're going to do some changes and we're going to set the number of CPUs to 1. We're going to set the RAM size to 50, and we're going to run this sucker and see what happens. Okay, save. All right, there it goes. When it outputs, it actually outputs a fairly nice little file. Puts the execution, what type of scheduler you're using, and number of CPUs, RAM size, ready size, queue size, and all the other information. You'll see that it actually does check how many cycles and the idle time of the CPU. Continuing on from that, you do have we can actually set that up, and let's set it up to run eight, 8 CPUs at 150 RAM, and we'll save that and run it. There we go. Same thing. Got all this information, this very chopped up portion of the PCB. This is just for notation if I needed to divide by number of instructions, checking my math in general. You'll see that the cycles went down, way down, and that you have a lot of CPUs, except a lot of them are idle for a lot of the time of the CPU, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and then same data from the phase from the other run. So we're going to continue on with the presentation, and from there we're going to actually go and take a look at. So see the operating system in action, and so we're going to continue on, and you have some data that we're collecting here. The data points are going to be the long-term scheduler. It has 3 data points, being the 3 different algorithms. There's 3 different short-term scheduler algorithms, 3 quantities of processor, 3 RAM queue sizes, and 9 different data points. All told, not including each job as an individual piece, we have about 729 pieces of data that I can collect and average against. So how do we get the data? Well, the data is prepared like this, as you saw in the thing. It's just a pretty much tabular form of this information here. Well, to make it a little bit easier to handle, I actually started compiling it into Excel to give it a little bit more of a grid form and kind of get some information. And you can look down the line, you can see that when we only have 1 CPU, our estimated run times go up. And this is for job 0 running on first come first serve, so that'll give you a little bit of insight on what we're having here, why the whole time for 1 CPU and then 0, because it's always executing. So if you go from that and we actually look, there's one more way to present the data you use as a chart. You can see these, again, these big jumps when there's only 1 CPU on hold time and completion time. That's because when there's only 1 CPU, as soon as another process gets on the CPU from context switching, as soon as the process 1 or job 0 is ready to go, it should be first to go, but now it's actually having to cycle through all these other jobs before it can get back to process to job 0. So that's what you're seeing, these big hits here. But when we have 4 and 8 CPUs, it can chunk through the jobs really fast, or actually load them onto different CPUs and offset that balance. And that's why it dips down to 0, and you see a lot lower cycle time. You see here the 4 and 8 is actually equivalent in cycle time, and that's because we can't utilize all the CPUs because we have limited memory. So I can only have so many instructions of memory at a time before we can execute the next set of jobs. So there's not very many jobs getting to the ready queue while the memory's full, or there's no jobs getting to the ready queue while the memory's full. So we're waiting for the memory to clean up. The memory cleans up, it then jumps up, and boom, we're done. So the big high-level analysis I did was on the all process completion timing, the time from 0 to however many cycles it takes to complete all processes. And you'll see there's a couple of data points that we really want to touch on here. The first one is this. This is this big drop from when we go from 50 memory to 100 memory, and you'll see we almost like half our speed, our number of cycles. And that's because we're getting double the amount of jobs almost into the ready queue, because none of our jobs are super huge, and it gives us that added flexibility. You'll see it again dips down when we have 4 processors, 8 processors, and then it jumps back up a little bit when we go up to 150 memory. We don't see a big drop in memory like we did with the 50 to 100, because now we've got most of the jobs in memory, and we don't really need that much more. So we're just getting a little bit more utilization out of the memory, maybe 1 more job or 2 more jobs. And that's where you're seeing that dip here, and then we're seeing a lot more utilization down here as we get more processors with more jobs ready to process more quickly. But what's interesting here is that red circle is actually the lowest point on the graph, and 2 of these guys has a low point, and we'll kind of get into that in a second. Over here on the right-hand side is actually what the long-term scheduler and the short-term scheduler algorithms are being run for each of these data points. So kind of nifty. So looking at who's the most efficient, so we're going to kind of look at that, starting with the number 3, number 2, and then finally the number 1. At number 3, we have the priority algorithm, long-term scheduler, and then all 3 of its functions at the 150 RAM and actually 8 CPU. This is a typo here, 8 CPUs. and it actually does, or at 4 CPUs, and that's 202 cycles. So it actually does fairly well. It performs really well, and it's not what you'd expect. I actually expected the Shortest Job first to be one of the top guys. It didn't actually come into place anywhere. I'm guessing because it hits a lot of weight in I/O queues, and that actually causes it to miss a bunch of cycles. Once again, we have and then we have over here the 200. That's a 150 RAM and 8 CPUs, and it's a little bit better than its counterpart over here by 2 cycles, but it's still not super efficient. And then what's most surprising is this: the first come first serve, least instructions of priority at 196 cycles at 100 RAM and 4 CPU. Specifically 100 RAM 4 CPU. Actually, the 100 RAM 8 CPU was less efficient by about 10 cycles, or by about 4 cycles, which leads me to believe that there's the way it loads in the jobs is it just becomes a little more efficient, because when it's a first come first serve, it's getting them in the right order, and then when it comes up, when it gets the jobs into the ready queue then organizes it by the most efficient least instructions, or by priority, which actually probably luckily is one of the most efficient methods. So why is it the most efficient? Well, what I've noticed is that on these, comparing all the ones, and this is actually a comparison between at RAM 150 and CPU 4, the FCFS LI and FCS priority, SJF priority, that they are super efficient. Almost all of the other processes, or the other combinations, all have a CPU idle time of over 33% at all times. I mean, it's typically closer to 39 or 40. These guys are actually fairly low, but the CPU's utilization time is very, very high for these two specific algorithms. And that actually stays true almost throughout all the data points, except that the other data points, they can utilize the higher memory and the higher CPU count better. But this guy, at 4 CPUs and 150 RAM, it is the most efficient, and that's actually why I think they place so highly. So what can I do to improve my design? I can implement true memory management. That means using paging and virtualization, memory virtualization, to actually increase the amount of jobs I can have on memory, and using some predictive memory checks from some predictive memory loading to actually offset. Because if I grab pages 1 and 2 from job 1, that gets me through about 6 processes. I may hit a wait or something prior to that. So besides the page fault and the context switch there, we should be fairly more efficient. Once again, I could also implement the preemption process, meaning that when I have a shortest job first style short-term or lowest instruction short-term scheduler, it could actually do a lot better job by making sure that you could schedule ahead of time, or dump something onto the CPU that has a very little time to execute, and we can get those executing really fast and get the termination down, so we can get the memory freed up faster. Because that seems to be my problem right now, is that I don't free up the memory fast enough. So if I could get the least instructions on there faster and get the memory freed up faster, I get more jobs on the ready queue and more things processing. Especially when I have higher CPUs. I also could redesign the algorithms for the long-term scheduler and short-term scheduler. This is mostly just a personal. I don't like the way they're built. They could be a lot better, especially if I go to larger, like hundreds of thousands of jobs. I'm going to have a lot of problems because I actually iterate through that in an in fashion. I don't actually break it up into a data structure, or break it up using any of the sorting algorithms that we know. This is kind of fast and loose way to do it just for this project, since I have such a small data set. And then I could also implement better file handling. Right now I'm loading all the information manually into the hard drive, and not actually using a file loading system. So I could definitely do better in that. So all in all, I think I've had a great time doing this project. It's been very entertaining and very informational. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me. But otherwise, have a great day, and have a great summer, and I hope to see you in fall.